So here, while we are talking about animations, I wanted to also show you how to create a moving text that kind of flies in from the side and then stays there, but still kind of drifts away and then moves off after a few seconds. And to demonstrate that, I'll use a little animation that I've just created here in Dog Waffle. And the next thing I'll do is create a text. So I'll take the text tool and grab the lower right corner to make it a little bit bigger. And well, let's see, project Dog Waffle. There you go. We'll put that in and change the font. Let's go to the font tool, size perhaps, make it a little bit bigger. Maybe choosing a different font altogether. Let's find one that we will like. There you go. Let's try this one. And again, we can adjust the font a little bit. I guess something like this will be good. And sometimes you also have a bold option or underscore or italic. Let's try that. All right. So now, if I want this to be animated from left to right, one easy way or one very powerful way to do that is to actually turn this into a brush. And we have this option here, make brush. Before I do that though, I will choose the color that I want it to be in. So I'll say something like maybe pink or a light yellow, something like this, that will stand out against the dark background. And now I'll turn this into a brush. So now that I have it as a brush, I can enable the preview, and there it is. And then I can also make it fully opaque. There it is. And so the trick now is to move it sideways, and so kind of come really quickly in and then kind of drift a little bit sideways and then move away sideways again really fast out of the scene. And what we'll do is we'll use first of all the brush store and manage to keep this asset available in case we decide we want a different hue. For instance, we could change the hue right here and say actually maybe a pink is a little bit better. Yep, let's try that. And so now we have animation brush keyframer. Let's use that. The brush keyframer can be used to, well, of course, to keyframe a brush. And so what we'll do is indicate where that brush needs to be seen. Now, one thing you notice, there's a little bit of white edges, and maybe we want to actually add some of that. So one thing you can do under the brush menu with transparency, you can increase, you can grow the keying. Or use the other curly brace to shrink it. But if you raise it, it will. If you increase it, let's go stamp it down so we have the keyboard focus. You can increase this and add a little bit of a white glow around it, revealing simply the background color that was cut off on the transparency. And so what I'll do is undo this here and store this brush, because that's probably a better one to use right now. And so we have this brush asset. So now we go into the animation brush keyframer. And in the brush keyframer, we can simply position ourselves here to say, I want this brush to come in from the side very quickly at the beginning. In fact, at the very beginning, as we look through this entire timeline, we might not even see it yet. So only about here is when we want to see it. Let's do a keyframe where it's going to be seen at that point. Right, keyframe that, and just before that is when it's going to move in very quickly. So that's when we need to have it sideways, perhaps at about this position. There you go. But also you can see a sort of a dashed line going here, but you also want the opacity to disappear. And really, I mean, it's going to go the other way. From here it's invisible, and then it's going to suddenly come in, move in very quickly, and turn fully visible. At the very beginning, you want to make sure that it still has that 0 opacity. No surprises there. And we don't care where it is. Here is where it's going to matter. Then it's becoming visible, and we want to see it till about here. And so let's go and keyframe that. And then for the end here, we want to move it out again. So here we can also move it, grab it like this and move it sideways, and have the opacity go back to 0. So there you go, keyframe that. So you can see that it's going to basically do this: move in, stay there, And now it's doing a little bit of a ricochet here. It's kind of coming backwards, and that's because of the spline interpolation that's overshooting, going from slow movement to fast movement. So here's where you might want to actually force it to be a linear transition, so that it's not giving you any sort of surprises. And that's a nice smooth transition. Now the thing is, sometimes these lines are not exactly horizontal because it's really just approximate here. If you have a lot of leeway, you can give this a little bit more vertical clearance, and you can probably adjust it better. So one thing you could do, if it was off, you could find that keyframe and reposition it slightly at a different location. Right, so I'm going to go totally off here just to demonstrate the point. And actually I missed it. I'm off on a different keyframe, so I'm going to remove this keyframe. Probably need to go one over here. It's a bit difficult at times to find it exactly because of the width of this marker. Let's see if we can move it around there, keyframe it. So yeah, now we have this line going here. So here's where we would want to find it. What you want to do is find where this line or these dots here at what point are they at the same horizontal. And so you want to essentially target for that. You want to look for that. So at this location here, what you want to do is grab this point, position it here so that you can then start moving it down to about the same, and something like this. Close enough. You know, this is not a very precise science. It's a bit more of an art. And I missed here by one keyframe, so I'm going to delete this one. And so now I have an acceptable movement going sideways, no hiccups. And let's go and render that. And one thing I'll do is make sure that the animation I have here in the background is actually stored. I think I have that. Yep, there it is. Because I may need to go back to it. So let's do a first try with this just rendering like that. And there it is, rendering, going and disappearing again. And moving that aside, we can now go play this and see it right there. And there it is. Now, one thing we might want to do is introduce a little bit of motion blur to that, so that as it's moving fast, it doesn't stay crisp. It also goes a little bit with motion blur. So let me restore the animation here, and then go back to the keyframer. And here I want to now enable the motion blur. Right? And so that could add, see, there it is. You see how fast it's moving. It's giving us a little bit of a motion blur to it. Now here you could spend a little bit of time experimenting with the shutter, see if perhaps a faster shutter or a longer shutter might be better and give you even more motion blur. There it is. So that's a great one to experiment with as well. So let's go and render that with the motion blur, and I think that will be it for this demo. Coming in any second, right there. Now sometimes the rendering takes long enough that it doesn't have the cycles to also update it. So don't be scared here. It's it's still busy rendering. The visual update is not showing any feedback. You'll just wait until the animation rendering is done, and it's probably done in a few more seconds here. It does take more time when you have the motion blur enabled, because it's actually rendering it several times across the mean position of that particular frame. But let's go wait for a few more seconds here for this to complete, and there it is. Alright, so this time I can close this, and we have this animation now here with the motion blur right on it, and again here too. So let's go see our final animation. Let's make sure we play it at 30 frames a second now. And there we go. Alright, thanks for watching.
Funky music.